the other one, Ray, Tommy Ray, his son, and he stayed out of his house.
Oh, okay.
Where is it? And they were in the filming the episode.
That's cool.
Turfed it? Awesome.
Is that some sarcasm coming out?
Should be.
Which part of it? I was able to talk about your project down there at Legacy Point, with Marianne. Since Kristen's not here, Kristen's got the southern part of MacArthur Boulevard.
Where's your buddy?
Okay, let's roll.
The hour 5:30 having arrived, and call the committee of the whole meeting to order. If you all please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Will do. Alderman Redpath.
Here.
Alderman Senor.
That's right.
Alderwoman Turner.
Here.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
Here.
Alderman Proctor. Here. Alderwoman DeCenso.
Present.
Alderman McMiniman.
Here.
Alderman Tylen.
Here.
Alderman Donlin.
Here.
Alderman Hanauer.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair will recognize Mayor Langfelder for a proclamation. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to have Teresa Haley, the state NAACP president, come forward, as well as Ken Page, former president, and Carl Madison. We just had the rededication of the 1908 race riot markers. The one that we rededicated was on 11th of Madison. And we do have a proclamation, and it's necessary to take the time to reflect back on our history so we all can learn from that. And then after I read the proclamation, I'll ask each individual if you'd like to say something. You're more than welcome to. So the proclamation reads, whereas we remember the horrific events that took place over a century ago in Springfield, Illinois, when a white mob thwarted in an attempt to lynch 2 black inmates in the Sangamon County Jail, went on a rampage, destroying dozens of black-owned businesses and homes in Springfield. And whereas the race riot of 1908 took the lives of 2 black men who were lynched and 5 white men, with dozens more injured, other deaths connected to the riot happened in the days prior to and after it ended. However, out of this specific tragedy, one of the preeminent civil rights organizations was born, the NAACP, and whereas in 1991, more than 8 decades after these events, 2 students from Isles School did their history project on the 1908 race riot, and whereas in their studies, Lindsay Harney and Amanda Staub learned there was no memorial or marker to commemorate the riot, so they circulated a petition amongst their classmates and presented it to former Springfield Mayor Ozzie Langfelder and the City Council, urging them to correct this error. And whereas subsequently a city ordinance was passed creating the Historical Events Memorial Committee, which was charged with memorializing the 1908 race riot, and the committee met for the first time in 1992 in the city's municipal center. And whereas the committee worked on the design and placement of 8 markers, and in September 1994, the markers were installed. And whereas today the city rededicates these markers 110 years after the riot occurred and recommits that as unsavory as some of our city's past may be, we will never forget these atrocities. We will continue to work towards embracing our history, educating both residents and visitors about our past, present, and future, and we will continue to evolve, making Springfield the model city for others to follow. And whereas nowhere else in America has the history of race relations unfolded like in Springfield, we are the home of the great emancipator, Abraham Lincoln, the site of the 1908 race riot, which resulted in the creation of the NAACP, the city where a historic lawsuit changed our commission form of government to the strong mayor aldermanic form, and we are the capital city where our first African-American president, Barack Obama, worked as a legislator. And whereas we take our role in history seriously and believe our efforts to remember the past of our present, events of our past have an impact on the livelihood of residents today and tomorrow. As Abraham Lincoln said, the probability that we may fall in the struggle ought not deter us from the support of a cause we believe to be just. Now, therefore, I, James O. Langfelder, Mayor of the City of Springfield, Illinois, do, together with the City Council, do hereby recognize and recommit our strong support of civil rights and opposition to racism and discrimination of all kinds. We stand together with unequivocal belief that hate and bigotry have no place in our community nor in our country. We will forever commemorate the race riot of 1908 on August 14th. In witness hereof, today I set my hand in the seal of the City of Springfield.
Thank you. This is beautiful. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you not only for being the mayor of Springfield, but being a friend of Springfield. Thank you for honoring your father's commitment, along with who I call Aunt Velma Carey. I knew Aunt Velma as a young person growing up in Springfield. This is my home. A lot of times people ask me, why do I continue to fight to do what's right? It's because I love Springfield. And what happened in Ferguson could easily happen in Springfield. But if we continue to work together as a community, we will prevent acts like that from occurring in our home state, in our hometown. I am so proud of you all for being here tonight. 1908 seems like a long time ago, seems like just yesterday. But we have to know our past so we won't repeat it. We have to remember that the NAACP was started because of the 1908 race riots that took place right here in our hometown. Springfield, what are we going to do to honor your commitment, to honor all of our commitment? This is our home. We have to continue to fight and do what's right. I always tell people about the NAACP. And if you didn't know it, the NAACP is not just about black folks. It is truly about all folks. When you think about 1908 and the proclamation that the mayor just read, two men, not only did the mobster go at them, but I have some of my colleagues here from Bloomington, Illinois branch who will be celebrating their 100th anniversary, our commemoration, in October. It was the Bloomington sheriff that came over in a hearse in the middle of the night to get those young black men out of Springfield and to keep them safe over in Bloomington. So we must learn our history if you don't know our history. You have to know it so you won't repeat it. Thank you again for coming out tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Carl at this time.
Most of you may be aware I've been in Ohio for the last 17 years, but I am a native of Springfield. Went here, went to schools, public schools, private schools, Catholic schools here, and did not know of the riots. Came back and formed a organization to preserve, not-for-profit organization to preserve the history of the 1908 riots. And then at that time is when I was introduced to Lindsay Harney and Amanda Staub. We did work together. The mayor, Ozzie Langfelder at the time, liked the work that I was doing, appointed me to his historical committee on the race riots. Then met an extraordinary woman in Velma Carey, worked with her, and we established the race riot walking tour. As I've said before, this is a great city. It has the greatest president in the United States here. Okay, and also I'd like to, if you think about it, I'd like to expound on that a little bit. The greatest agent of social change in Abraham Lincoln. So it should be no surprise that that members got together when we had a race riot in this city and established the NAACP, which is now the greatest civil rights organization in this nation. So it's ironic. It's an unfortunate set of events that happened, but we can learn from it. And living in Springfield, if you're either you're native here or if you've relocated here, you can't help but feel social change around this whole city. We breathe social change, if you think about it. So just want to share that with everyone, and lessons learned. And again, thanks for your father's work on this. Appreciate it, Jim, and yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to Alderwoman Turner, Alderwoman DeCenso, and my fellow aldermen, and to my Ward 10 alderman. Hello, sir. Haven't had that pleasure yet, but we will meet again. I want to thank you and the city for this opportunity. There will be other opportunities. I was the NAACP president when we did the 100th year anniversary, and I worked with Mayor Davlin at that time. And Jim Donnellan, and it was a great opportunity. So there will be other opportunities that will come forward in this city, and this city should jump on those opportunities. But I would like to say to my aldermen that if Ward 10 is strong, then every other ward in this city should be strong. If other wards in this city are not strong with their residents, then Ward 10 and any other wards in this city are not strong. So not only are you looking out for me as a Ward 10 resident, but I would hope that you would look out for all of the wards and all of you as aldermen. You know, don't have that tunnel vision. It's important to do that because everybody doesn't live how we think that they do live. So I appreciate that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd, go ahead and take a picture. This time I'd like to acknowledge and ask them to come forward, Lindsay Harney Price and Amanda Staub Londrigan. If Teresa, you want to stay up here, that'd be great. At the time, they were young sixth grade students that came forward with the concept of rededicating the markers, along with Carl Madison, and we'll let them say a few words if they'd like, but we do have a plaque for them where it reads, my favorite Abraham Lincoln quote, it says, government of the people, by the people, for the people. In appreciation for your educational activism, the City of Springfield commends Amanda Staub Londrigan, I want to make sure I get the name right, Amanda Staub Londrigan and Lindsay Harney Price for your commitment and sincerity and dedication to educate our residents and visitors about Springfield's history. City of Springfield Historical Events Memorial Committee, 1908 Race Riot Walking Tour, Ozzie Langfelder Mayor, Velma Carey, Chairperson. In recognition of the State of Illinois Bicentennial in 2018, the City of Springfield rededicates the 1908 Race Riot Walking Tour. Jim Langfelder Mayor, Teresa Haley, NAACP President.
You know, when you're 11 years old, going in front of the city council, you don't really realize the difference that you're making and what you're really doing. And as you grow older, you realize the impact that you had. And I know as a teacher, I hope that I'm inspiring and instilling that desire in the students that I work with to, you know, have social change and work towards that and making sure, you know, they learn from the history and things are not repeated. Thank you.
I'd echo Amanda's remarks as well. I think I remember being in this chamber and I think facing this direction and talking with the city council and bringing forth that petition. And my daughter's going to start school at Isles Elementary next Monday. She's going to walk those same hallways that I did and walk in those same classrooms that I was at. So I hope that I can, as a parent, instill in her the importance of, you know, learning from our history, learning from our mistakes, so that we can be better people, better country, better city. So it's just amazing to be here in front of you again today, and I hope this continues to be a force for good and for change in our community. Thank you.
And then at 6 o'clock tonight, we have the Springfield Had No Shame film screening and discussion at the Springfield Lincoln Library next door. And then at 7:30, there's a community reception at the Old State Capitol. And a point of interest, I believe Alderman Redpath was on the city council when they petitioned it.
They look different.
So we appreciate everybody's commitment to change, positive change. And like we said, when we did the rededication, really what it comes down to is our ability to talk to one another. You know, we need to continue to communicate. The day we stop communicating, that's when the day that we end up going down the path of repeating bad history. So we need to keep the lines of communication open and move forward in a positive manner, building each other up, not tearing each other down. So thank you for being part of this dedication ceremony.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the July 31st, 2018 committee meeting minutes.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Treasurer's report and debt owed to the city report. Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Chairperson Donilon. The beginning balance of the corporate fund in July was $3,902,546. In the month of July, we had total receipts of $10,311,873. We took in total disbursements and spent $7,743,472 of that money. So the ending balance in the month of July of the corporate fund would be $6,470,947. That concludes my report, Chair Donilon.
Is there a report regarding the debt owed to the city?
The debt owed to the city, we gave a report last committee of how far we had progressed with that, a little over $500,000 in 6 months' time. It's going very, very well. The auditors are going to have their reports to us, I think, by the end of the month. Is that right, Director McCarty? And there will probably be some totals on that I can give you from there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Is there a motion to accept the Treasurer's report and the debt owed to the city's report?
Motion.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any questions of the Treasurer? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. You all received a copy of the Office of Budget and Management Contract Report. Does anybody have any questions of the Director? Going once, going twice. Okay, moving right along. Presentations. Library Director Will Ahern is wanting to talk about the Lincoln Library Strategic Plan. Director?
Thank you very much. Good evening, City Council. Appreciate you guys having me out today. I'm proud to present the 5-year strategic plan for the Lincoln Library, and I'll try to go quick. So before we even get into the plan, I want to tell you how we first went about going about it. We actually looked into getting community feedback from a number of different folks, both internally, looking at our staff. We just didn't ask our management team. We worked with all of the staff to kind of get objectives, different things they were interested in. We also worked with our board hand in hand along the way. They attended many of our meetings. We also had UIS complete a 39-person community survey to feel what was important for the community and what was important for the library in particular. And last but not least, we actually opened up a survey to determine what was important to those folks as well about our community. We actually put a survey on the website. And so kind of getting into the plan, we actually have two components as you take a look at it. There is one component that will remain the same during the whole plan, and then one will be updated on a yearly basis. The strategic plan, which is up to about page 12, I believe, the first section, that will remain consistent the whole time of the plan for the 5 years. So that would be the whole time. And then one thing that we've noticed in looking at a lot of other strategic plans, both for libraries and other organizations, is some plans did a really excellent job in looking short-term and kind of getting those low-hanging fruits, but some of them did a really good job in being timeless and classic. We really wanted to address both those things, so we created the community snapshot, which is basically kind of what it sounds like. It's a snapshot of our demographics, sociographics of our community, kind of how it breaks down, so that way we can kind of compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges on a basis. So if we see a large influx of, let's say, Spanish-speaking individuals or a lot more of aging of our population or whatever it may be, we can kind of create objectives, yearly goals that we can kind of go along with that. And we actually created these objectives on a yearly basis. We'll have those, we'll actually different things that we think go along with those goals, as you'll kind of see later on. So we wanted to create part of the plan that was timeless and classic, that will probably be relevant even 10 years from now, 15 years, let alone 5, and part that was agile and nimble and something that would be able to change with the times quickly. So our mission is to empower, connect, and inspire Springfield. So we just kind of eliminated the Springfield and put empower, connect, inspire. And our vision is a little lofty, but we hope every child has the opportunity to succeed in school and beyond. Every citizen is empowered to participate fully in our democracy at every level. Every community has the opportunity to use technology to enrich their lives. People of all backgrounds feel welcome and connected to one another. Every community member has the opportunity to express their own creativity. And last but not least, no one's greatness is limited by a lack of resources. While I recognize these are lofty goals and a lot to think about, we definitely think this is with the library's purview and something we hope to get one day. And so that brings me to my goals here. These goals will be throughout the whole plan. That is part of the strategic plan, those 4 goals. So that's supporting young minds, creating informed citizens, embracing diversity, encourage curiosity. On a yearly basis, we will create objectives that will be done yearly, like I said, and will change yearly, that kind of go along with those goals, and we have one other category as well. So I could tell you about each of those goals in particular, but I think it might help you to show you some of the objectives that kind of lead up, and I'll give you a little background on that. So our first objective is to support young minds. A lot of times librarians are actually the first teacher for children in our community, and time again we saw with the survey that youth was really important, reaching out to youth and being those first teachers. They're teaching things when they're doing story times. They make it look easy because a lot of times they're actually teaching you how to the previous steps to even reading before that. So when they're singing songs, doing rhymes, it's actually developing language. So they kind of make it look easy, but they're actually doing a lot of other steps before that. It is the first person in the community, a lot of times, that is not your mom, dad, parent, guardian that teaches you. And we also recognize there's a larger growing digital divide. A lot of people, when they hear that, think about kind of older folks, not digital natives versus non-digital natives, but we see a growing divide among actually in even the younger crowd between those who have access to technology and those who do not have. So we're seeing that becoming more and more, and we wanted to focus on that, so we wanted to host 6 programs involving technology for children and teenagers. Another one of our objectives is to create informed citizens. It shows through surveys that people trust libraries as a whole. We're an unbiased source of information. We work on being trustworthy and unbiased. It's a big deal for us. So there's been a lot of interest in actually credibility and looking at sources, particularly news ones, and understanding kind of our community, connecting with it a little bit more. And then, even civically understanding how our political process works, things like that. So we really want to create citizens that are informed in our community. And one that highlights that is create and host 4 programs in a year to engage new residents and connect them to local resources and government. Because if they understand our community and are more better connected with it, we think they'll stay longer and enjoy their life here more. We also think diversity is a very important concept, so we want to embrace diversity here, and I think it's pretty apropos today to kind of talk a little bit about that, obviously. And so it's important the library includes every single person in the community to be here. A smart man once said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," and we feel the same way about our community as well. Diversity is a strength of our library and a strength of our community. And that just doesn't include one aspect, but culturally, racially, individuals with disabilities, orientation, and even including diverse organizations as well. So to kind of embrace that a little bit, we want to host an annual intercultural festival to celebrate and embrace the community's diversity with at least 300 attendees. I'm going to give my plug now. For January 26th, we're going to be having a Same Fest. It's going to be the 3rd annual one. Please come down, put it on your calendar. We'd love to see you there. Got to get my marketing in there, guys. And last but not least, our last goal is going to be encouraging curiosity. The library is a great place to kind of discover yourself and find new passions in your life. I know when I was a young man, I found a lot of my passions at the library in basketball, sketch comedy, things like that. And it's kind of a low-risk way to try something out, dip your toes in the water, so to speak. So someone might be interested in genealogy. They can actually go ahead, attend a class, look at the SVC, Segment Valley Collection, and see if that's interesting to them. If it's not, then no harm, no foul. There's really not much they put in there. If it is something they're interested in, they can explore it through books, digital resources, other ways of programming, and we can kind of help you develop that interest as well. So to encourage curiosity, we wanted to provide access to 10 free fine art experiences for all ages. And last but not least, We found time and time again we were finding objectives that didn't really fit within those goals, but we still felt were important. A lot of times they're kind of stat-based. So we wanted to include that, so we added one last set of objectives. And again, these will be done on a yearly basis. And they're kind of stat-based. So one, for example, is increase the number of active library accounts by 5%. And I want to see if you guys had any questions.
Alderman Proctor.
Not a question, but more of a statement. Just say thank you for everything you're doing there. You and your staff are doing a great job. I never thought I'd have kids that said, can we go to the library? And because of what you and your staff are doing, they love going to the library, and I appreciate that very much.
My response is a fist pump to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Tylen, then Turner.
Will, I also want to make sure to thank your staff. I know that like the children's area, the display that changes on a monthly basis, I know that that's done with volunteer time for the most part, and the creativity and the passion that your volunteers and your staff put in above and beyond their 40 hours a week is amazing.
They make me look very good. Thank you.
Alderwoman Turner.
Yeah, I've told you this before, but I do want to echo Alderman Proctor. I think that you're doing a fantastic job, and I've just really seen the library come alive under your leadership and be in real partnership with the community. I mean, the level of programming and the diversity of the programming that you offer is just amazing. It's every time I look at what's happening during the week, I'm like, wow, it's just amazing what you're doing over there. So I just really want to commend you. And it seems that everything that I saw in your presentation, you're already doing and doing it very well. So just, continue.
We'll try to keep building on that, and I will pass it along. It's meaningful to us. Thank you.
Alderman Redpath.
Will, you're doing a great job. I've been here a long time, and you're very proactive. You really bring a lot of energy to the library, which sometimes I wonder how you get it all. but you're a great asset to the city. I'm really pleased you're here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. That's meaningful. Thank you.
Alderman Hanauer.
I echo that too, and I will tell you that for the public, if you haven't had a chance, if you're in the genealogy, the family tree maker and all that stuff, the Sangamon Valley collection is unbelievable. I had the opportunity to go up. The staff is just great for helping you find things, and their knowledge is incredible. And I mean, they've got everything. They've got high school yearbooks up there from forever.
Oh,
I mean, they probably got Alderman Red Pass, and I didn't even know they made books back then.
It's on a scroll.
So well done, and again, tell your staff I really appreciated the help when I went, and I need to get back up there and do some more research.
SVC is a gem. Sangamon Valley Collection is a gem, and Kurt and Stephanie are wonderful people. I will absolutely pass it on.
Director, one question about your presentation. You mentioned that the goal is to increase the active library users. When you're tracking that, do you track the electronic usage as well, meaning a lot of people download free books and things of that nature? Is that factored into the equation?
Absolutely. Those do count as cards. We treat that the same because if you're using the library's resources, we consider that an active user.
Great. We'll keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Alderman?
I agree with all the other comments by all the other aldermen.
Thank you.
Me too.
Is that unanimous? All right. Great work.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you.
Okay, ordinances table the remaining committee. 2017, 103, 266, 435, 436, 489, 2018, 005, 110, 141, 247, 285, 322, 340 are tabled or remain in committee. Any alderman wish to move any of these ordinances out of committee or onto the floor tonight for discussion? Anyone? Okay. Mr. Clerk?
CWLP 2018-345, an ordinance accepting bids and authorizing contract UW 19-06-34, liquid chlorine with JCI Jones Chemicals Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $111,300 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second.
There's a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-346, an ordinance accepting bids the bid and authorizing execution of contract UE 19-05-27 Indian Hills Underground Electric Rebuild with Espelon Construction, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $353,242.57 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Consent.
Second. Motion and a second for consent. Any discussion?
Yes, discussion.
Alderwoman DeCenzo.
So it says here there were originally 4 bidders on this contract, and 1 withdrew their bid. And of the 3 remaining bidders, 1 was a local vendor. And even with the 5% local vendor preference applied, Asplund was still the lowest bid. From what I know, the lowest local bid was far above this bid, but this is an out-of-town outfit. I am assuming they're going to use out-of-town employees. Is that correct?
I mean, they may be bringing their own supervisors, but typically outside electrical contractors, they get out of the hall, out of the local.
So they'll get them out of the
Yeah.
local union hall?
Right.
All of them?
As far as I know, right?
I mean, they'll probably have supervisors informing that
Right,
they'll bring
supervisors.
with them. I would anticipate most of the linemen doing the actual work will be local out of the hall.
Okay. I don't think that's the understanding of the local hall. I just think on big contracts, the more local work we can get and use is the best way to go.
Yeah, John, the difference between the bids was like 250,000?
It was significant.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I have.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-347, an ordinance accepting bids and authorizing the execution of contract UE 19-06-30, Unit 4 SCR Catalyst Replacement with Hayes Mechanical, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $155,042 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second. Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-348, an ordinance accepting bids and authorizing contract UE 19-06-36 Ford Explorers with Landmark Ford Trucks Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $58,426.72 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-349, an ordinance accepting bids and authorizing contract UE 19-06-38 Palo Alto Firewall with SHI International Corporation in an amount not to exceed $51,400 for the Information Systems Division of the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-350, an ordinance approving the purchase of replacement gears and associated parts for the Dahlman Power Plant number 33's number 1 pulverizer from Allstorm Power Incorporated in an amount of $345,448.36 for the Office of Public Utilities.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Yes.
Alderman Hanauer.
Hey, on Doug, can you come up real quick? I just got a quick one for you. I thought we just fixed the pulverizer not too long ago. I thought that was one of the areas that we had maintenance on or something.
I believe that was Unit 4.
What was Unit 4?
Yeah, we
This
have
is 33.
4
Okay.
pulverizers for Unit 33, and Unit 4 has 3 of them.
Okay.
Is that correct, John? Am I remember that correctly? Yeah.
Okay. I just remember I wasn't sure I was getting the units confused.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Public Works, 2018-351, an ordinance authorizing condemnation of real property for the purpose of constructing usable segment 4 of the Springfield Rail Improvement Project for the Office of Public Works.
Motion for omnibus consideration for ordinances 2018-351, 352, 353, and 354.
Second. Motion and a second for omnibus vote on 351, 52, 53, and 54. Is there a second? Alderman Tylen. All those in favor of an omnibus vote signify by saying aye. Aye. Mr. Clerk.
2018-352, an ordinance authorizing a contract with James J. Reckner and Susan Reckner for the purchase of one parcel of real estate located at 2421 South 5th Street in an amount of $16,555 relating to the Springfield Rail Improvement Project for the Office of Public Works. 2018-353, an ordinance authorizing payment of $15,000 to the Shipinski Family Living Trust for purchase of a portion of one parcel located at 2417 South 5th Street and authorizing disposal of 3,461.66 square feet of excess right-of-way area at 2413 South 5th Street for the Springfield Rail Improvement Project for the Office of Public Works. 2018-354, a supplemental resolution notifying the State of Illinois Department of Transportation that motor fuel tax funds in an amount of $234,668 may be used for land acquisition for the Springfield Rail Improvement Project, MFT section number 18-00478-00-BR for the Office of Public Works.
Motion for consent for the omnibus.
Second.
Motion and a second for consent. Alderman Virginzi.
There's a discrepancy in the amounts. It says 24,668. The other one says 234,668. Which one are we voting on?
234.
354 is not related to the previous ones. It's 4 parcels that were already approved by the council. What we try to do is run them at the same time, but for some reason they got disconnected. So this is really cleanup, because whenever we use MFT funds, we have to send that. We have to do an ordinance to notify.
I think what he's referring to, Director, is in the ordinance description. It says 234,668. In the text below, it says 24,668.
It's 234.
234. Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
I think that's a typo, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not in the actual ordinance.
We'd prefer it was 24,668.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. Okay, there's a motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-355, an ordinance authorizing execution of an amendment to extend the date of an agreement with the State of Illinois Department of Transportation for preliminary engineering of the Walnut Street corridor from South Grand Avenue to Capitol Avenue, MFT section number 17-00484-00-SP for the Office of Public Works.
Move to consent. Second.
Motion and a second for consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-356, an ordinance authorizing an agreement between the City of Springfield and the State of Illinois for construction of the Archer Elevator Road and Isles Avenue improvements, MFT section number 17-00431-02-PV for the Office of Public Works.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Question.
Alderman Minimum.
There's a whereas clause in the ordinance that says, whereas the State of Illinois will reimburse the city 80% of the cost. That's the 4th whereas. The State of Illinois will reimburse the city for 80% of the cost. And then the next statement reads that the city's portion of the project is $1.9 million. Are those, could you explain those two provisions?
Yeah, it's not, I'll have to double check that, but the 80%, the 1.9 million is the city's portion of it. It's about, I think it's about 30% of the project, but that takes into consideration the use of our MFT funds, so which would come through, we do have to notify IDOT of that. Let me verify that. I don't think it should say 80%. It probably should be more 70%. That's where we're looking at.
So it looks like
it's a combination of funds there, as you can see. There's some ITEP funds, there's some developer funds that are part of this, as well as the funds we were able to receive through the process of getting funds for Archer Elevator. The mayor actually requested us to go to the SATs, and we went forward with trying to move this project up, and they were able to get some funds for that. So
Yeah, the 80% looks like it might be a typo of some kind.
I believe it is. I believe that's a little high, but I'll send you a breakout.
And the total cost we expect to be 4.1 million, is that correct?
5.197.
That's correct. It's closer to 5.2 million for the entire project.
And do we have an expected start date and an expected completion date?
We would like to put it out to bid, getting on the IDOT letting for November. So the idea is, it depends on weather. You can do a lot of work sometimes in the wintertime. So we can begin some of that as soon as this year. Most of the bulk of the work will probably be done next year. So we're probably looking at next spring or early summer.
Thank you.
Alderman Hanauer.
And Mark, you're going to, in the meantime, are you guys going to be able to do some of the utility relocation and stuff to maybe shorten the
That's the work we do.
That's the weather.
Typically, that would be the work we'd start immediately and try to do that if we weather permitting. It depends. Right. So, once you get into December, time we let this, bid it, get it back for council approval, you're probably into the winter a little bit. So, if we have a winter really like the last couple of winters, you could do some of that probably.
That's great. We've only waited 25 years, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, speaking of waiting years, speaking of waiting for years, we're waiting on the MacArthur Boulevard, Mayor. You know what Alderman DeCenso and the other Alderman Tylen, we border, and Alderman Proctor, we all border MacArthur Boulevard. So this is a very significant amount of spending for our newer neighborhoods, and we really want to see a plan for our older neighborhoods.
As do I.
And we're going to talk about Hilltop Road here pretty soon, and I've got some questions about that too on the far eastern side of Springfield. Thanks a lot, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman, and I want to again thank the Public Works Department for their attention that they've given behind the scenes to the Koki Mill improvements. That is much appreciated as well, which is in Ward 9 and Ward 8 and Ward 10. So thank you very much. Okay, there's a motion for the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-357, a resolution notifying the State of Illinois Department of Transportation that motor fuel tax funds in an amount of $1,900,000 may be used for the Archer Elevator Road Improvements Project, MFT Section 17-00431-02-WR for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second. Motion and a second for consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
358, an ordinance authorizing execution of an agreement with Rochester Township for jurisdictional transfer of Hilltop Road beginning at the Springfield corporate limit line north to State Route 29 for the Office of Public Works.
Move for consent.
Second. Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion?
Yes.
Alderman Redpath.
I just want to thank the mayor. This project's been pushed off for years and years, and we didn't see anything on the in the future coming up. The mayor stepped in and pushed this along, so thank you for that. It's a very dangerous road, as is Archer Elevator and MacArthur, and so we all have to decide. And Koki Mill, and what do you got over there, Doris?
Every road.
But I just wanted to commend the mayor for stepping in and pushing this up, and Mark and Nate for their efforts, because this is the beginning of a long process. I understand that, so thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman McMenlo.
Chuck, what's the distance for this jurisdictional transfer? How much of the road are we taking on the city?
I'll let the directors speak.
It's roughly about 2,000 feet we're talking about that we're taking out. It's really from around the trail, well, just south of the one subdivision there. Was it Palisades?
Palisades,
to
yes.
all the way to the trail area. So
that's about
Route 29.
2/5 of a mile.
Yes,
what's the condition of that road?
It's if you've traveled it, it's mostly oil and chip. That's part of the. Eventually, we want to upgrade the entire road. What we're trying to do with this project is really because the real issue is there's a lot of foot traffic, bike traffic on that road. With all the traffic, the road traffic, it's kind of dangerous. So what we're trying to do is move forward with a shared bike pedestrian path and get that in, because it's really a safety issue we're looking at right now.
So I think you can anticipate the next question. How much is Rochester Township paying the city to assume the cost of the upgrades of the road?
The road is, like I say, it's a country oil and chip road. They have not given us anything for it. We went back and forth. We did approach them about participating, and that's kind of why this project has been hung up for a while. They have really don't have the funds or the interest in participating, spending money there for this pedestrian path. So what we came down to is really we had to decide whether we want to move forward with the project, because we think it is an important project, and it's a small piece of it overall. So we decided it probably made sense to do the jurisdictional transfer and get the project completed.
So I think we got to really seriously look at when we take on township roads, how much contribution we need from those townships, because we're going to be doing this not just with Hilltop, but other roads. And Chuck, you can understand the question I'm asking, because 2 weeks ago when we talked about Chatham Road, and we were going to do some crack filling for the portion that's owned by Leland Grove, and you asked who's going to pay for that, and the answer was the entire payment is coming from Leland Grove. Leland Grove is paying for the road that we're going to fix up the city. So I think the same and similar approach needs to be used for these township roads.
Leland Grove is paying for the patching. The next step is
That's
the more
correct. They're still
significant
paying
one.
for
It's
the
about
patching.
$1 million.
And Alderman Redpath wanted to make sure that the city was not going to pay for what's Leland Grove's obligation. So I think the similar question is being asked here. We want to make sure that the townships are contributing to the upgrading of the roads, and we got to negotiate that and be fair with our taxpayers, that we don't want to shift responsibilities from township taxpayers to Springfield taxpayers. So,
Especially when they get such a good deal on water.
Director, what's the length of Hilltop Road? Do you have any?
It's about a little 1.5 miles. I think the whole corridor is. This is a couple thousand feet.
Thank you.
A little bit less.
This is a safety issue that is the reason the mayor stepped in. I commend him for that. And I don't disagree with Alderman McMenamin's assessment of that, because we don't need to be taking on stuff that we can't pay for. But every one of us are going to run into the same situation when they get to certain areas. The problem is that we've been struggling to get state and federal funds for this road, which takes up probably about almost a third of my ward. And there's so much growth out off of Hilltop Road that this is just the beginning. The most important thing is making that road safe for the children that are traveling it every day. And we were lucky so far. We've had a lot of accidents and a lot of people have been hurt on that road. And we're very lucky that it hasn't turned any worse than what it has. So.
And from Public Works perspective, we agree completely with you as well, but it really comes down to just what the Alderman said, it is a safety issue, and it's most likely, it's more than likely, this project probably would never get done because they're never going to be able to contribute the money to really do anything there. So,
Alderwoman DeCenzo.
And I'm saying this out of frustration. I know what we're talking about on MacArthur is an IDOT issue as well. But there are two schools impacted by MacArthur Boulevard, Blessed Sacrament School and Butler School. They cross MacArthur Boulevard, both schools do. And as someone who lives in that area, you cannot walk down MacArthur Boulevard. You have to go through the parking lots to get to Baskin-Robbins and Snowbiz. It's not safe. So, it's a little frustrating to see, that's a core corridor in our city that is falling, it's crumbling.
And we, from Public Works standpoint, we completely agree with you. I think one of the positive things is, depending either way what happens with the upcoming gubernatorial election, there's most likely and hopefully going to be a capital bill next year. So that provides a lot of opportunity moving forward with perhaps MacArthur Boulevard, as well as some other areas of the city as well. So there's a great opportunity. We just got to make sure that we're all on the same page before that happens moving forward. And it's something we're trying to work through right now.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
One of the things I'd like for you to look at and keep in mind is Peoria Road, because that's a very dangerous thing with the sidewalks where it is and the telephone poles right next to the road, and the road lanes aren't really that wide. And so I think since that is one of the corridors, Route 66, and they're coming up for their 150th anniversary or whatever for 2026.
Yep. And that's another perfect example for a capital bill as a potential opportunity there as well as the TIF that's coming about that's moving forward in that area as well. We take every road into consideration in Public Works. So
good answer.
Alderwoman Turner.
I think if we went around, everybody would have a specific road or street in their ward, or several roads and streets in their ward that need some attention. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's really a great exercise that Public Works does every year, is that they have a meeting with each of the aldermen and give them the opportunity to talk about what their needs are and help Public Works set their priorities. So I would just encourage everybody to kind of keep a list of those, and instead of interjecting them, while we're talking about one specific ordinance or road, talk with Public Works about it during that exercise. I had a street, White City, that was very dangerous because it is right behind Washington Middle School. Never has sidewalk on either side, and it's a very narrow with parking. So we talked about that in the exercise, and they did some corrective activity. So it does work. So I would just encourage everybody to take that approach.
Very good. Any further comments? Any questions of the director? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-366, an ordinance accepting the lowest responsible bid and authorizing execution of contract number PW 19-06-35 with Denler Incorporated for the FY 2019 crack filling program in an amount not to exceed $364,500 for the Office of Public Works.
Motion for discussion.
Second.
Motion and a second for discussion. Alderwoman Turner.
I just had a couple of questions about this ordinance and the way that it ended up being awarded. So the individual that received the award is not a local contractor, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, but are they going to use local labor, or how's that going to work?
They're required to follow the local labor preference, and what kicks in if they don't, the fines, the penalties, and then there's been some changes, and I'll defer to legal on that. If they don't meet those, there are some potential consequences in the future of being considered as a contractor with the city. So
I guess my question would be, in the discussions with them, what has been their approach, or what have they said about using local labor?
Well, once it gets council approval, we always have a pre-construction meeting. So in that pre-construction meeting, we'll talk about all those items, those issues, go over it. But they are required to follow the same rules and regulations as anybody else on a contract, and we expect they will. So, and we've used them actually in the past as well. So,
Have there been any issues?
I think there's a gentleman here with them that wants to speak. So.
No, I'm not with them.
Oh, so okay.
I've got some questions about them.
Okay.
Have there
Give
been
you an opportunity to speak in a moment, sir.
Yeah, and as well as Cassandra's here with purchasing. She can.
Is there a representative of the company that is being proposed here this evening?
Not aware of it. There have been some discussions about that. They did give us in writing at one point that they were going to try and use local labor. They also put it in their bid this time, how they've reached out and are trying to obtain the local labor. They posted things, are accepting resumes, and other things. So I know it has been a discussion that they have to use it, and they are trying to comply.
So when they say that they've reached out and they're posting bid notices, have they had discussions, or have they been in consultation with the local labor unions? Because it would seem to me that if they're interested in using local labor, instead of posting things, they would just simply talk with the local labor unions.
And I haven't asked that question. David's been working with them. He's not here. But I know there have been discussions that they are going to use local labor.
I have a question. We have rules in place that make requirements such as apprenticeship programs, and a certain number of hours must be performed by local labor. And in order to, obviously, if you participate in an apprenticeship program, does that, I guess my question is to legal counsel, does that apply to the individual workers or the organization, or both?
Well, you're talking about prevailing wage?
Talking about, don't we have in our rules that in order for a company to do business with the city, they got to have a apprenticeship program for certain types of work?
That's part of prevailing wage.
Right.
And the company itself has to have that program.
So I guess my question is, the employees that they utilize for the job, not only do we, of course, want to promote local employment from local individuals, but we want to make sure that, wouldn't we want to make sure that those individuals are in an apprenticeship program or have gone through it? In other words, you had mentioned that they put an advertising out. You wouldn't want somebody from just any walk of life to be able to
And I know
This requires some kind of expertise,
they,
I guess is what I'm getting at.
And they did provide us with their apprenticeship program papers. So
Right, but if they're going to hire local and they're not working with an existing organization such as a labor organization, and you mentioned that they put an ad out basically, I guess, to the general public, there's a potential for individuals to come forward that aren't in the apprenticeship program or have not gone through it.
there could be that potential, but they are supposed to be working with the people and picking qualified people.
Corporation Counsel can provide clarification.
Well, I think there is there's actually a ordinance later about some corrections or additions with respect to the local labor program or process. But my memory is that the bidder in this case submitted as part of their bid a plan to comply with it, because during the pilot program last year, they did not provide or did not participate or meet the requirements and were subsequently received a penalty, as some others also did. And so as part of the bid, my recollection is that they had in there a list of names that had either they had solicited or received information from they were interested in getting jobs.
I believe so. They provided different samples.
Okay.
They didn't provide everything.
But they would, if the city signs a contract with this company or any company, then they must meet those requirements. If they fail to meet the requirements, then through our normal process, like any ordinance, it would be like any other specification, didn't use the right concrete or didn't use the right measurements, or any of a number of these specifications, one of which is to comply with both local labor and prevailing wage, then that would be grounds to terminate the contract as a breach of contract. So there's a process, and if they are designated as the lowest responsible bidder, then they sign the contract, and therefore they're bound by that contract.
Any further questions? Alderman Redpath.
So did they provide this stuff to you?
They provided some paperwork in their bid. I'm not sure if they provided anything else additional. Had been mentioned about asking for a letter. I'm not sure if that was received, because that was not.
So we're not sure if they're going to comply.
They state they're going to comply.
When the process, we have engineering staff, so they deal with their construction engineers assigned to the project as well as an engineering technician. Throughout the project, they have to gather this information for the project to be closed out for their pay vouchers and such. So they're looking at their paying prevailing wage, if they're meeting the requirements of the project, as well as an engineering technician overseeing the project. So yes, that data over time is collected, and we'll know. I mean, if they violated the penalties that the Corporation Counsel was discussing that or mentioned would go in effect. So.
Alderwoman Turner, then Fulgenzi, then Proctor.
I understand what you're saying about the prevailing wage and issuing the, the documents on a weekly basis. My concern is if there are issues with them not only hiring local, but hiring qualified local workers in accordance with our labor ordinance, that's a concern, and I don't know that we can correct that once the bid is awarded and the project is underway. Because I think we've seen in situations before where we've had contractors that have not adhered to certain things that they were supposed to do, and then and so they get fined in that. But oftentimes businesses write those things into their operations, so they can absorb a fine, and they write that into their operations. I mean, we saw that with Walmart when they said we can park trucks here because we can pay the $50,000. So I just think we need to be sure on the front end that everybody's going to be in compliance instead of trying to straighten it out.
We are, and that what's happening is, though, so what they've done, they have been in compliance. We've used them before. They didn't meet that local threshold, so they were fined. And you're correct. I think some companies probably bid, assuming that, and that they bid accordingly. However, the way the ordinance was written, I don't think there's much we could do about it really, and that's what Corporation Council brought up. I think there's an ordinance up today to address some of that. So going forward, you'll be able, if a contractor going forward doesn't meet that local requirement, there's going to be some options where we can deal with that a little more aggressively. But right now, if they don't make it, really, there's a penalty. They assess it, and they lose certain money on the contract. But we monitor all that and follow the code, everything up front. And I'll tell you, the quality of the work they've done has been good. I've talked to David Whitworth, our construction engineer, as well as the techs on the job, and they were very satisfied with the quality of the work. So,
Alderman Fulgenzi.
The bottom line is, though, that none of the money is going to be expended until they meet all the requirements. Is that true?
they have met the requirements to get to this point, yes. And then moving forward, like I said, we have some on the job site. They turn in their pay vouchers, all that's checked.
I'm saying, though, in the totality of it all, until they meet all the requirements, there's not going to be any money expended.
Yes. Okay. Like every contract, yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alderman Proctor.
So you said that they've done work for the city previously. I'm just looking at, I guess this is the bid sheet. And then, so it says percentage of city residents on most recently completed contract, and it says 0%. Is that just, you had no data, or is this 0% in the last?
I think that was what it was last time.
So they didn't miss it, they just really missed it, is what it.
They did. It's not, they don't have I don't forget what the numbers are. Their crews are not large on this project. So, yeah, okay, that's correct. And the way it's written, we would penalize them for that. But I think going forward, we're talking making changes where we can probably be more aggressive going forward, where they're not able to get away with this. They come in at 0%, there'll be some penalty for that, or at least give us an opportunity to consider that when we're reviewing the proposals.
So to follow up on Alderwoman Turner's question, so would the fine be like $100,000? Because that looks like that's the difference between the two.
It's a percentage, I think.
Is it a percentage?
It's a percentage.
So
that's what city code is, how it was written. So,
thank you.
Alderman Tylen.
Well, I guess my question is that since we do have another ordinance coming up that's going to change the language, should we wait on this to make sure that these rules are in place, or does the fact that the RFP and the bid went out before the rules happened?
I would defer to legal, but I think you'd have to rebid it, and then there might be some issues with that legally. But
Mr. Zirkle.
I'm not sure what exactly is the question on the.
I guess my question is that if we pass the ordinance that hasn't happened yet today, if we move it to council next week and pass these changes on the contracts with the percentage of city and project work area and the purchasing, the different rules for the award and requirements, if the mayor signs this into law before he signs that one, does that mean that they have to comply by the new rules, or are they subject to the rules that were in place at the time of the posting and the bid process?
It would be a preferred process if both ordinances pass, to sign the corrections to the local labor ordinance first. This is a matter of course. However, my memory is, and again, I'll stand corrected, but my memory is that the boilerplate in the bid itself and the actual contract is very explicit, indicating that failure to comply with ordinances specifically relating to things like prevailing wage or local labor ordinance are grounds for suspending the contract and so on. I believe that's actually inserted into the specifications.
It was. We rejected the bids and rebid it with additional boilerplate language to address this concern. It's number 14 in the number 14 on section 1 in our bid. So this particular bid is covered under that. So if they don't comply, there's other actions that can be taken moving forward that wasn't there last year.
But under the exact terms of the contract.
I guess my concern is that they obviously, if they knew the rules prior to, and they had 0%, they didn't have any city residents on the prior contract, according to this. I mean, they didn't even, not even 1%. They didn't even get 1%. It's 0%.
I'll have to check. The crew size is not very big either on this project. It's a small crew.
I guess my concern is are they thumbing their nose at our rules? And
Well,
I
it's
mean,
not the only contractor that hasn't met the local preference. There's others as well.
well, we need to, and I agree, we need to keep a better, we need to keep better tabs on this as well. I do agree with that.
City or is it county? Is it only city residents?
I mean, I just don't know. To me, what concerns me is we don't have any, I don't see, I'm concerned they're just going to go ahead and go around our rules again. I guess that's how they were able to cut $100,000 off the
Not
bid.
going
I don't
forward, they won't be able to do that. We'll be able to consider the fact that they're not meeting it. So there's more teeth in it going forward, so.
Okay.
And I don't want to, I should forget that we may have local contractors that don't meet the local either, because it's city only. It's not just county. So a lot of the contractors, a lot of laborers don't necessarily live in the city of Springfield, they're from the surrounding area and small communities. So sometimes that causes a challenge as well.
Okay, is there any other questions of Alderman, or we're going to let the gentleman in orange come up and identify himself and say a few words, please.
Thank you. You guys have discussed a lot of it. I'm Chris Wingler with Complete Asphalt Service Company, and we were second place bidder on this bid. We are from Pittsfield, but all of our labor comes from Springfield. All of our workers are laborers or operators out of the Springfield Hall, and we have about 8 people right now that are full-time employees that come from there, and we would be doubling that if we were awarded this contract. We would, to meet the goal, we would be adding 8 more from the city of Springfield, and we would be getting them from the local labor hall, where, like they did last year, didn't even work with the local labor hall or anything, just came in, did it, paid their fine, and went on. That's what concerns me is this year I'm going to put the people that I consider local already, because they're paying into the local apprenticeship and everything to make that possible for the labor hall. And like I said, we were second place, but if we are awarded this, it will be union labor, it will be minorities and females, it will be people that come from the local labor hall that have been trained, not just people off the street. And according to the local labor hall, they have made no attempt or do not plan on using anybody from the laborers or operators where we would. So not only would we be keeping the employees that I have already that pay into this apprenticeship program and all that stuff that are not city residents but are still local in the labor unions, not only would I be keeping them still employed, but I would be adding more to it out of the labor hall, and I would be getting qualified laborers that are out there. This is hot stuff, dangerous equipment and everything like that. These, I would be getting trained employees. And once this job is over, those employees would have worked and be able to go back to the hall and continue to work, where with a company like Dindler, they come in, and if they even try to hire anybody, then once they are done with the job, those people are just left hanging. They've got no career ahead of them, like the people that are in the apprenticeship program in the union that I would be utilizing and putting back there. Then they can go, once we're done with there, if we don't use them on another project, they go back to the hall and work some more out of there and be helping that way. And like I said last year, I don't think they made any attempt to, and I, of course, don't know what they're going to do this year, but it has been indicated to me through the labor hall that they plan on just hiring off the street, and that would be it. So there is no training, no safety, anything like that with those employees necessarily. And so that's what concerns me about it. Plus, I would like to get to work, keep my people working, and put some more people on for that. And for that reason, it just doesn't seem fair to me that they can just, we're going to pay the penalty, do the job, and not use anything local. It doesn't get to our purpose that we're trying to get to. Do you guys have any questions of me or?
How many supervisors are you bringing from wherever you're coming from?
I'm going to bring all my people, which would be 8 people, which would be laborers, supervisors, laborers, and everything. And then I would have to hire by the city ordinance 8 from the local hall that were Springfield residents as well. And we would work those together instead of putting just a small crew where I only have to put 2 people on it or something to keep doing, and drag it out. I would be putting that many on my crew.
How come there's such a big gap between you and them or the next 2 bidders?
I can't understand it. I don't know. I've done this. I did this project from when it was just a little bitty project, and we've done it for years and years and years. Last year was the first year that we did not get the project, and that's when Dindler came in. There was another local contractor that bid both times this year, and they were higher than us.
Well,
So
even if they don't hire out of the hall, they're still required to pay prevailing wage, am I right about that?
Correct.
So they've almost got to pay the same amount. I can't understand how they can be that much lower.
I can't either. I can't answer that for you either. And probably neither can Kenny Contractors. It was the other bidder.
Alderman Tylen.
As a follow-up on Alderman Redpath's question, on the bid form, it shows that under item number 4, the crack filling with asphalt repair mastic, that seems to be the biggest discrepancy between the bids.
Is it? I was unable to see any of the
What
bid
your company
results.
comes in at is a unit price of 3.15 for a total of 252,000 for the 80,000 quantity. And the other bidder is really close to yours at a unit price of 3.11. But these guys are coming in at 2.05, which is almost a $90,000 difference on the bid. And it makes me question, if we're talking about a material with the crack filling of the mastic, is it that we're talking about a material difference where they've got a lower cost on their supply, or is it a labor difference? What are we talking on that bid line?
I don't know. It could be a material thing. It could be a supplier. They could be doing more volume of it and have a better price.
I guess my question is more from Director Mahoney.
I'm sorry.
Don't go too far, just in case.
And you're right, and you've identified the mastic patching is what we've used. You've seen it probably last year. We did it on some of Chatham Road, and we tend to do it quite a bit more. And it's a better material where it kind of glazes over. I'll have David Whitworth come next week. He's an engineer. He explained it better. But it's kind of a new thing they started using the last couple of years, and we had some success with it. So that is in this bid package as part of our crack filling, using that mastic.
Is the mastic, we've talked about this before over the different years with some of the things that we've had come in, and I think you may have actually been sitting 2 seats to my right during one of the discussions back when you were an alderman with the question of the materials and the things that were in the concrete, in the mix, in the patch, where we were questioning how, I guess if I remember correctly, this goes back to obviously the Davlin administration, where we were questioning one of the bidders on were they using the same compound because the work that they were doing was not lasting as long. And I want to say it was on MacArthur, affecting you and me. And there was a question of, it was poor, lesser quality concrete work that was being done. And it was actually, my assertion was that it was costing us more in the long run because we were having to fix it 2 and 3 times.
Yeah, well, and the specs are there for the material, and the mastic that we're talking about is something that was very specified by engineering staff is trying, and because it does last longer. Part of the crack filling, the way it's explained to me, is you have to be aggressive. You have to do it at the right time. A lot of that is before the road gets too far gone. So you're crack filling, you're keeping the water out, you're kind of sealing it up and getting more life out of that road. So it's supposed to last a little bit longer. So the material that seems to work best is this mastic they started using, speccing out when they bid it, I think last year and then this year. I think only 2 years. So yeah, it's more specific than it has been in the last few years on the material. Okay. But I'll gladly I'll talk to David and send you guys.
I think I would feel more comfortable holding this in committee and having David come 2 weeks from now at the next committee.
He can explain to you why we're using the mastic, and then he also can speak to the quality of the work. He's worked very closely with them the last 2 years. I think they've got the bid.
Because when you're looking across the bid sheet, that is the one major thing that is just hugely different between all of them. The rest of them are they're pretty close to each other on everything else, and that's the part that just frightens me, is that I don't want to get to a situation like we had 9-10 years ago where we wondered whether or not we were getting lesser quality material being thrown onto our streets and then having to fix it more often.
Well, and that's the responsibility of our staff, engineering, to make sure that doesn't happen. But I'll gladly have David come next Tuesday and give you the tutorial of mastic and all that and talk about it. And I have no problem holding it. The only thing I will say is that we are in the construction season, so hopefully we can move this along fairly soon because we want to get it done before the end of the year. So, Alderman Redpath.
Mark, are they buying the materials here? Or are they bringing it with them? Or how's that work? Where are you bringing your material from?
I have got
Please go to the microphone.
I'm sorry. Please do it.
Yeah, there's many suppliers of that, and I'm not sure of the pricing of it. We've done some of it, but we are not a huge user of it. The crack fill is a whole different animal than the mastic is. The mastic is to like do areas that are too far gone, they're past crack sealing, and so it's not even, you don't even use the same equipment, it's not the same materials, the crack filling. It could be two whole different jobs. You could have a crack fill job and you could have a mastic job because they're so different, not even the same machines or anything. And there's several suppliers that supply this, and it can come, I mean, the rubber that we put in the cracks is, the company is located Craftco, and that's the main one everybody uses, but they're out of Arizona, and it ships out of Ohio to get to me. It's all American made, but you know, he may be getting his from Seattle and be doing 10 times more of it. I don't know why he is so much lower, and I didn't have any of that information. I haven't seen any bid tabs from either of the bid letting, so I didn't know where the difference was until tonight when you guys just told me that.
The point of my question is that this is not a material that can be purchased in Springfield, Illinois. Is that right? Even for all three of you contractors, you're getting it from somewhere outside of here. So we're still trying to decipher why the big difference is in that mastic, and it's $60,000, $70,000, $80,000.
And I am too.
That's a big difference. So I'm just trying to figure all that out. That's
certainly, and I don't know why there's such a big difference there. The two, you know, it sounds like we were close to the other bid on it, and but I don't know why they're so low on that. I do not understand.
That's not for you to explain.
Yeah, I can sit here all night, but I do not know.
And David could probably speak to some of that, or at least his perception of why. A lot of it, I think, is they do specialize some of that mastic. They do a lot more of it, maybe. But I'll have him come next Tuesday if you guys want that. So.
And keep in mind, just to try to make sure we're all on the same page, the specification is what controls the selection of the material. So presumably, the specification is very specific. Therefore, each bidder is providing the same material. And the contract would normally have a performance bond, normally have warranties. Therefore, if there was a problem, there would be resource on the part of the city in terms of just the materials. In other words, the performance of the contract itself. In addition, presumably public, and I'm saying this based on an observation like with the ramp across the street, Public Works would typically monitor it week by week to inspect the work as it goes on. So being caught in a situation where the wrong product would be used would be, or a lesser product or something presumably would not be a likelihood.
Yeah, and I'm not going to speak for David. We'll have him come next week. But as far as the local preference, local issue, hiring issue aside, the quality of the work, the use of the material, using the right material, all that stuff, that they did a fine job as far as engineering is what they've said. So, but I can easily have David come next week.
Chairman, Alderman minimum. You know, we already give a 5% financial break to any local bidders, and they get that in the bidding process. And now we have also, in addition to that, we have a fine if the winning bidder fails to use local labor. And so if this, I'm very concerned about delaying this bid. If it's meeting all the technical requirements, and we're already in mid-August, and we need to get this work done. I know this mastic has been very successful on Chatham Road, and our Public Works Director said this bidder, this winning bidder tonight, has a good record of performance on our road. So I'm really concerned about delaying this contract. I think our residents expect our roads to be repaired during the construction season, and I don't see enough of a good reason to delay this. That's where I'm at.
And I would point out this would be a second delay because we bid it once, as Cassandra mentioned, and this is the second go-around. It's unlikely if we had to rebid it again that it would happen this year. We have to delay it till next year. And some of it would probably adjust because of crack filling. Like I said, it's a lot of it's the timing.
Any further questions? Any further comments?
I'll make a motion to place this on the debate agenda for next week so that any issues that are out there can be hopefully resolved by then. And if we can't resolve them, then we'll have to delay it.
A motion and a second for the debate agenda. All those in favor?
Discussion, please.
Alderman Redpath.
If we're not going to hold it in committee, I'm going to vote no against this ordinance because I think it's important that we have a history of this contractor not complying Our questions aren't going to be answered, and we'll hold it in committee. If we have enough votes, we'll pull it back out on Tuesday. So now I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Any further comments? Any further comments? Roll call, Mr. Clerk, for the debate agenda.
Alderman Redpath.
No.
Alderman Senor is not here. Alderwoman Turner.
No.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
Yes.
Alderman Proctor.
No.
Alderman Woolman DeCenso.
No.
Alderman McMiniman.
Yes.
Alderman Tylen.
No.
Alderman Donnelly.
No.
Alderman Hanauer.
No, motion to hold in committee.
So, second.
Motion and a second to hold in committee. Is there
Discussion?
further discussion? Alderman McMinimum.
Yeah, just to get everything out in front, I think really what's happening here, we're protecting a particular union hall, and if I'm wrong about that, I'd like to hear. And I think we really should do what's in the best interest of our city and our taxpayers and our voters.
Alderwoman Turner.
You said if you were wrong, you wanted to hear it. Well, as far as I'm concerned, with my vote, you're definitely wrong. I am protecting the citizens of Springfield that are paying money that will be used to pay this contractor, and I'm also protecting the minority working men and women in this community who have every right to participate in city-funded projects. If an individual comes into Springfield and says that he is supposed to use union labor by ordinance, and he says to the purchasing agent in his bid that the way he's going to comply with that is that he's going to post a announcement in the newspaper or on social media, and he expects union labor to come to him in that fashion, I think that that's a red flag that he doesn't intend to comply with our ordinance from the beginning. The second part of that is that individuals, we have an ordinance that states that a contractor must be participating in, it's a mandatory participation in an apprenticeship program. If an individual is coming into town and is soliciting workers through the method that this contractor has said that he's going to solicit, then there is no guarantee that those individuals have participated in a mandatory apprenticeship program, but we know for sure that they have not participated in his mandatory participation apprenticeship program. And there's a reason that is included in our city ordinances, because number one, it guarantees that the individuals that are on those projects are skilled workers who are going to be in a situation where they are going to be safe, and the project is going to be done in a safe manner that's going to be successful, and it's going to be up to the standards that everyone is expecting the project to adhere to. So those are the individuals that I'm interested in supporting, and those are the people that have taken the time and the opportunity to avail themselves of an apprenticeship program because they were preparing themselves for a career, not a job. So they went through that process. And those are the people that I'm protecting because we have a city ordinance that says that I should protect those people. So I know you always want to try to throw shade on that union thing, but you can stop that nonsense right now because those are the two folks that I'm protecting.
Mr. Chair.
Alderman Fulgenzi, then Alderman McMinimum.
Yes. I'm not for or against anybody on this thing, and I agree with Alderman Turner that we need to protect all those people that she's talking about, but I think we're establishing a dangerous precedent that we put out an RFP for a project and then we decide that we're not going to take it, even though we have safeguards in there that show fines and everything. Maybe we need to establish a better ordinance to allow for it. But the thing of it is, we put out an RFP, somebody has got $90,000 from the second guy, maybe for whatever reason, and maybe he made a mistake. But the point of it is, I think it's establishing a dangerous precedent not to accept bids when they follow all the rules that we created.
Yeah, that's exactly the point I wish to make, that if we've had our contracting officer stand up before us and say that all the rules of our code have been followed, and we've had our city attorney say that if there's a failure to honor the contract and our city code, we can withhold payment. So therefore, I hear the experts telling us that this is good to go. And so I resent all the comments that were made to make it seem like we're not all trying to do what's best for our city. I think we are trying to do what's best for our city, because one contract came in at 25% less than the other contract, the other two contracts. And we have statements from our Public Works Director that's saying that this winning bidder tonight has performed well in the past. So I find this unusual that we're handling this in this particular manner.
Alderwoman Turner, excuse me.
The Public Works Director said that this individual has performed the work well in the past. He also said that he was fined several times in the past. So we have to put those two things together. The other piece of it is that I disagree with you that everything is good to go on this and they are in compliance, because there is no way possible that they could be in compliance with the mandatory apprenticeship program part of the ordinance, just by the way that they have said to the purchasing agent that they're going to solicit workers. So that they can't be in compliance with that part of the ordinance if that's the method that they're going to use to solicit workers.
Just a brief reply, Mr. Chair.
Alderman Hanauer, then Alderman Pimentel.
You know, what gets me on this one is that they didn't comply. They had 0% residents working in the past. Now, we got a residency rule, and I wasn't for it, but we have it. If we're not going to use it, then let's disband it, because this is getting ridiculous. It says right here, triple zeros, none. Now, I don't care how big the job is or whatever. They didn't even bother coming in using any of our people, and they just paid the fine. You know, to me, that's right there. If you get fined on a prior job, we should put in the specs, number one, that they are disqualified for a certain period of time, because that means we're going to have extra people stand over and make sure that they're following the rules, because they have 0 on there. They haven't complied. That's where I'm coming from on this. We've got a residency rule, we've got prevailing wage rule, we got to follow them. And if a company comes in and doesn't follow them, then they shouldn't be allowed to bid on our things. I'm concerned about the large gap in what they've bid. I was fortunate. I did a lot of RFPs at the state. I had one where I had a company come in large it was for server closets or server cabinets, and they came in at a large amount. It turned out they sent us the cabinets. They didn't send us the sides to them. So something, when usually you see a big discrepancy, something's going on there, and that's what concerns me about this whole deal.
Alderman?
Yeah, we really have two competing goals here, which are understandable. On the one hand, we want to hire local labor if we can, and on the other hand, we want these bids to come in a way that we respect the dollar too. We don't want local bidders to be always so much higher than out-of-town bidders. So we got two competing goals. Now, as far as we're talking about the fines, I think there's been no problem with the quality of the construction work here. I think the fine, in accordance with our ordinance, is that if local labor wasn't used, and I understand this is a small crew, maybe 5 or 6 individuals for this crack filling, then you can fine them in accordance with our ordinance, in accordance with our code, you can fine them And that's what took place here. But our code doesn't say that you disqualify them for the next bid if that's the situation. If we want to change that, then the city council can change that. So I think we just got to try to work towards both goals at the same time. Again, we got a dollar preference for local bidders. We've got this fine that kicks in if they don't use local labor. But, you know, how much more are we going to go? So I think we got to honor both goals, being careful with the dollar, but also trying to help local labor.
Alderman Fulgenzi.
I agree with Alderman McMinimum. The one thing that I would point out is that I don't want to leave the city open for a lawsuit because we disallowed this guy based upon something we know nothing about. We're not sure of anything yet. And I think that we have to be sure of everything.
Alderman Redpath.
Well, I disagree with the alderman because, frankly, these people have thumbed their nose to us in the past. They basically did a zero tolerance, zero initiative to bring local labor here. And we're going to get into a situation. We're in a lawsuit right now over the day's end who've done the same exact thing. And these fines don't scare these people. That's part of doing business for them. So, you know, we got a track record on this person. And Alderman Hanauer is exactly right. If people don't comply with our ordinances and we get into certain situations where we even have to fine them, they shouldn't be allowed to bid. And maybe we need to bring that ordinance. But the bottom line is that we've already got a track record on this company. They're going to thumb their nose at us. We're going to be in a lawsuit because of the things that's going on. So vote any way you want, but I really strongly believe that we ought to hold this until we get some more answers.
Alderwoman Turner.
I agree with Alderman Fulgenzi. I think that we do have a lot of questions that we don't have answers to, and the motion is not to deny the bid. It's simply to hold it until we can get the answers to those questions.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of holding this in committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it.
Finance, 2018-359, an ordinance authorizing execution of subrecipient agreement number 17-SR-003 with and authorizing payment to Boys and Girls Club of Central Illinois for property located at 300 South 15th Street, utilizing Community Development Block Grant funds in an amount not to exceed $140,000 through the Office of Planning and Economic Development.
Motion for consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-365, an ordinance authorizing payment of $684,000 over a 3-year period for the city's share of remediation costs incurred by the U.S. EPA claim number 17-CV-03168 relating to the cleanup of the Springfield Iron Company sericlacite.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
General City Business, 2018-360, an ordinance amending Chapter 38, Section 38.16 of the 1988 City of Springfield Code of Ordinances as amended pertaining to purchasing and contracts.
Motion for consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any comments? I'd like,
For amendment.
before we get into that, Alderman, I'd like Corporation Counsel, well, maybe we ought to hear the amendment, and then you can explain what the amendment is.
Okay.
Motion for amendment made by...
It's not, there is not an amendment. What I gave you inadvertently when we printed off the original didn't have all the underlining. So what I passed out was what the actual changes were, just so it's easier to follow. And this is what you may recall that about 1.5 years ago, the council had approved kind of a pilot program with using a requirement, one of the specifications, to try to encourage employment opportunities for city residents. And that's typically referred to, I think, as a local labor ordinance. And as a pilot program, the Public Works Department actually did a very excellent job of tracking the various contracts by way of it's showing basically the number of city residents who were employed on the various public works jobs. And so because it was a pilot program, there was a large group convened of both industry and different participants to kind of go through and after the first year kind of look through the process. And what you have here is primarily suggestions that relate to the process itself. And I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to kind of go through.
I think that would be advisable. Yes,
okay,
please.
All right. And like, for example, the very first, one of the questions, one of the issues came up in the area of compliance was, were the hours of persons assigned to, as part of overhead, to work on the project, like, for example, persons in the office and so on that were doing work related to the project, should their hours count? And so the first, if you will, first item there refers to that issue. And of course, the total cost of the project, which is the total cost of the bid, includes all hours, whether they're actually worked on the site or not. And that was meant to be a clarification. And then you'll see several references in here where rather than just the purchasing agent or OBM, it inserts language that says, for example, and the mayor or in corporation council or mayor or ad hoc committee where there's some need for consultation, so it's not just the purchasing agent. And again, this came up from a pretty lengthy discussion among a group of about 40 people going through all of these various what I would call more procedural issues. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? And if you go down, you'll see one reference is the question came up about the proof or the ability to administer it and what constitutes proof that a person lives in the city. And you'll see there are references a valid Springfield address at the time of the employment. So the question came up, it was before and after and so on. And so these are primarily clarifications. You go to the next item and it refers to weekly certified payroll. Well, we do it anyway, but this just is to clarify that that's the process that is used. And there's also reference you'll see to the city's electronic certified payroll software system, and I believe that's called ePrism, if I remember correctly. But that goes through the purchasing department where the certified payrolls are, instead of done manually, are actually done electronically. And what the report I think you referenced earlier where that showed a zero, so on, that's one of the products from that system. In other words, it just does a straight printout based on hours. And let me see here. The next is the language about to clarify what happens if there's really an intentional failure to comply, and that refers to the ability of the city to suspend a contractor or subcontractor where there's in effect, a pattern where they're just simply not complying from 1 year to 3 years from bidding. And that really follows our other language in other parts of the code and in the state law that allows a contractor on public contracts to be suspended based on certain violations. So that's where that, if you will, that language comes from. There was a question to clarify because it was, I think there's some difficulty understanding. If you look in the middle there where it talks about 1/20th and 1%, they preferred to put the 0.0125, which I think is approximately half of that. And again, that came from the committee, discussing through the impacts. And again, when you look at the report that you referenced earlier tonight, there's been reports on all of the various, public works contracts, and it goes right down the level of analyzing what percentage of work was done by what category, and then applying that percentage. So that's all done through the engineering department. Now, if you look down further, one of the questions came up about there was a concern that if the purchasing agent alone would be able to make a determination to increase the percentage. And the next language, it says that purchasing agents shall consult with the ad hoc committee regarding such adjustments. So the point was to give a little bit of due process before there would be any change to the penalties. Next item is the same kind of language, which there was general language in here that allowed the purchasing agent to increase the fines on subsequent contracts. And so rather than do that, the discussion was to simply provide for the possibility of a warning, a suspension of 1 to 3 years if there was violations. And the next item, if you go to the next page, the original ordinance provided for $500 and the group recommended $250 for a per violation. And if you look further, I'm trying to just quickly summarize. I don't want to burden you with all of this, but there's reference to the city already has certain rules relating to public works contracts, prevailing wage, and has for decades. So nothing new or different there. And it refers to under G, for example, 3813 is the existing prevailing wage provision, which by state law, cities are required to follow prevailing wage. 3813 is just our adoption of that process. And it simply is now restating in that section about the issue of the apprenticeship or training program. Again, that's part of the existing prevailing wage or what is called Davis-Bacon if you use federal money. There's two sets. Prevailing wage applies to state. Davis-Bacon provides to federal, but it's the same concept. And then if you look further, there's a requirement that, and again, this is a clarification, that if persons are using TIF funds, then like prevailing wage, they also have to comply with this. And again, this is just to clarify, we already have an ordinance, Section 3733, that addresses prevailing wage with tax increment financing. So again, it's just meant to be a clarification. And then the substantive change, again, this came from the committee, was that there should be some kind of an ad hoc group that could advise the purchasing agent or advise if there were needs for changes and so on. And that's a reference to appointing an ad hoc committee that would be able to make advice about this. And keep in mind that this particular ordinance, Chicago has a similar ordinance, almost verbatim. It's been adapted with Springfield with the idea that it would intended to try to set certain goals to try to hire city residents. That's the entire point behind it. And so there are penalties, but trying to address what Alderman McMenamin was talking about earlier, it's trying to balance, one, to create an incentive, but not to improperly or overburden taxpayers. So it's a work in progress. Remember, when it was first adopted about 1.5 years ago, it was very clear it was a pilot program that we were going to try to work through. This is kind of the first step after one season of doing it with that informal group. And these were kind of what I view as primarily procedural clarifications. What happens if this, what happens, who do they have to talk to, that sort of thing. So, there may be another set next year or the year after that, depending on how it works, because at some point a determination as a policy will be either it works or it doesn't work. And keep in mind that the initial pilot program was always intended to be something that was subject to adjustment. And that's why and I can't remember when that meeting happened, but I think it was in May or April where the large groups met, and then they broke down into some working groups. And this is the result of all of that activity.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions of Corporation Counsel?
Yes, please.
Alderman Tylen.
On page 2, under the section, when work is completed in the event that the city has determined that the contractor or subcontractor failed to ensure the fulfillment of the requirements of this section concerning the work hours performed by the eligible residents. It's saying, if I'm got this right, it's 0.0125% of each 1% that they're not making the qualification. So if, for example, if just simple numbers, and I'm guessing you guys might have Bill double check me here, if it was a $100,000 project and they did not have anyone on the project at all, they had 0% participation from city residents, then we're looking at a fine of $12.50 for each percent, which would then only be a $625 fine for having no city residents whatsoever on a $100,000 bid.
I will have to check your math. I'm not sure.
That's why I figured.
Yeah.
All right, here.
The one that was mentioned earlier, my memory is, and I don't have it in front of me, the one that you had referenced earlier with a 0, I think that contract was about $500,000, if I recall from last year. And I think the penalty under the old section, remember, they've reduced this. They're proposing to reduce it. Under the old formula, the calculation, I think, was around $15,000 out of the 500.
Okay.
And this would be a reduction.
If you divide that by 5, then on a $100,000 project, we'd be looking at it would have been a $3,000 fine, but now we need to see under which Bill's working the calculations back there. And while he does that, I guess the second half of my question would be, I agree with Alderman Redpath that if we've got someone who's come in and done it once, and we know that they're not making much of an effort to comply, and they're willing to just pay the fine as part of the cost of doing the job, is this ordinance, this document, where we should be making that change if we wanted to suspend, that if they're found to have not completed this section that I was referencing right here, where we have the fine and they're lowering the amount, that's fine. But is this the section where we should be considering adding a suspension of their ability to bid on other projects?
I thought there was another section that talked about suspension.
Mayor?
That is correct.
Section C has that.
Yeah.
And also at the top of that page.
Is section C, does that mean that, using the example from earlier, on the earlier ordinance, does that mean that the section C state, I want to make sure I understand this correctly, that the purchasing agent in consultation with Corporation Counsel and the mayor can suspend or this 1 to 3 year period of not being able to apply to bid on projects? Is that correct?
Yes, and there's also a reference at the top of that page.
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear. Sorry. Go ahead.
I apologize. Okay. No, keep in mind that when you're talking about public bidding, there's potential liability issues involved of significant nature. And so the purpose of these provisions with requiring consultation and so on is to make sure it's a check and balance process. Having the ad hoc committee was intended to have some basis of due process before you did something such as trying to bar or suspend a company's ability to bid. So once you take those steps, that becomes very significant.
Oh, I agree.
And so this was intended to clarify, because the questions came up in that large group, which were multiple contractors, I believe. Isn't that correct, Mayor? There were multiple companies there. And so the question came up of what's the check and balance? Do we have the ability to have a fair or somewhat of a fair process. So that's what this is intended to put a process in place that allows that to be considered.
So if this is Alderman Redpath.
So, council, is it what this will do is it can only be started from the mayor or the purchasing agent? It can't be started from some other complaint?
Well, that, when you say started, it would be started from the process of whatever, if there's a violation shown through the paperwork, such as failing to comply with, for example.
So that's an automatic disqualifier?
I'm sorry?
That'd be an automatic disqualifier?
It could be. It depends. It would, in my mind, like, for example, in this process, all of the, every exact permutation is not set out. So that may be something where you would ask for an explanation from the company, and then you would have to decide, was that explanation, was it something that was innocent? Was it something like, for example, any violation of a specification? You may ask that company to correct it. Do you see what I mean? So there's a variety of ways that you would want to make the city whole, because that's what this is all about, is to make the city whole. The city enters into a contract to do a certain thing under certain specifications. So the company has an obligation to comply. If there's a violation of that, then we have certain remedies. One of the remedies is to require them to comply or to fix what they've done.
But I guess what I'm getting to, is this too soft? Is this something that we could put more teeth into, that make it a little bit firmer, that people who don't comply go to a suspension situation, not necessarily 3 years, but maybe to a situation where they're not able to bid on contracts for a year or something?
6 months, 12 months.
Yeah,
based
whatever.
on number
I
of
mean,
offenses.
You almost have to go.
This seems a little soft to me. Huh?
I'm sorry.
Seems a little soft to me.
Any other alderman? Alderwoman Turner.
That was my concern, because we did go through a test, for lack of a better word, a test period where we laid the ordinance out, and then we went through a construction season, or a construction season and a half, and then we convened, everybody to say, okay, what worked, what didn't work, and then we set about trying to, address those issues and correct it so that people weren't unnecessarily penalized because of, some things that we could correct, or some different reporting processes that we could look at. So I think having done that, we really do need to be in a situation where this ordinance should be able to be looked at as as something that would preempt someone from not complying. So they would look at the ordinance and say, okay, I should do something different. I should not look at it as just a fine being part of the money of doing business, but I should avoid that, because the penalty would be too steep. And so I guess I agree with Alderman Redpath, because it's easy to write a check, but it's not so easy if you think that your actions would prohibit you from bidding on another project, at the course of, I would say 18 months, because if you're looking at 6 months, that's not even taking you into the next construction season. And, 12 months may not even take you into the next construction season. So that is really no penalty at all. So I guess I agree with Alderman Redpath that we should look at putting some more teeth into it.
Alderman Tylen.
After speaking with both the treasurer and OBM director, if you guys like to chime in.
It appears as written, what you're saying is accurate.
So it goes from being on a $100,000 project, goes from being a $3,000 fine down to $625. And it's, and during the discussion we were having back here, just trying to go through, this section may need cleaned up because Director McCarty interpreted it one way on the immediate part, where he was looking at for each 1% of the contract, for each percentage of shortfall, he was looking at it originally from the thought of they were 100% in non-compliance, whereas I was looking at it from the standpoint of we're asking for 50% compliance, and how many percent off the 50 were they? So, I mean, this is too open to interpretation the way this paragraph is written when we need a formula. And I think it just needs cleaned up and explained better than what's here, because you got 3 different financial people who were able to come up with 3 different answers in the first 5 minutes of looking at the document. So I think it just needs cleaned up. And I would like to amend my motion for consent to the debate agenda.
Second the motion. So
that we have time to get this cleaned up, and then if we're looking for an amendment for the time that they would have to sit out before they could bid again, I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think that we need to have better teeth. It shouldn't be something where we turn around and say stop, or we'll say stop again. It needs to have something that has ramifications and has a real result if they make no effort to comply.
The motion and a second for the debate agenda. Any further discussion?
Is it proper, Corporation Counsel, for amendments to be made at the City Council next week?
Certainly. I mean, there can be discussion. The only thing I would mention to you is that what you're going to, based on the pretty lengthy discussion I heard with that group, is you're going to get a lot of local companies that will be very concerned about what's being discussed right now, because the ones who were present were all local companies. And so what you have here is an attempt to try to more formalize the process. They were concerned about, one, the extent of the monetary fines. They were directly concerned about where there would be an inadvertent, or, for example, there may be a goal of 50%, but say they get 20%, so are they going to get barred for a year?
So I agree with your assessment on that. I know where you're going, and I agree with your assessment on that, because I always thought that the office personnel should be counted into the calculation anyway. But my point is that our ordinance is not tough enough to deter people from breaking the rules. And what we're getting into is they build that into their a fine of $652. Are you kidding me?
6.5.
I mean, that's nothing. And so that's my point, is that we got to give them some significant consequences if they don't comply. Any business, be it local or whoever it is, needs to know that if they violate the rules, that they're good. And I want to give them as much leeway as we possibly can to the point where they're able to do it. But if they're following the rules, they got nothing to worry about.
Alderman Proctor.
Can we get a list of those who are in this group that worked on this, and please send that to Council Coordinator Tim Griffin, and have him send that out to us, and then I guess any minutes or any notes they're taking during that discussion would be helpful.
What would also be helpful is, regardless of what the rate is, whether it's the original rate, a different rate, or what's listed as in the proposed amendment, I've seen it done with statutes many times. It would be helpful if maybe we just put in, for example, and put in some numbers so that it's as clear could be, so it isn't as subject to interpretation down the road. That would be very helpful, Corporation Counsel, if you could work on that with OBM. Thank you. Motion is for the debate agenda, and there's a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
2018-361, an ordinance authorizing an increase of the number of Class B liquor licenses by one for Here Today LLC DBA Here Today located at 1774 Wabash Avenue.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion and a second for the consent agenda. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Very briefly,
Alderman?
Barb Campbell, thank you for waiting 2 hours for your liquor license. You're all the way here from St. Louis. Thank you for your investment in Springfield. Here today, using a local general contractor, Evans Construction, put a million-plus improvement to the building at the southeast corner of Wabash and Chatham Road. You're hiring 28 employees. Thank you for your investment in Springfield.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Noted.
One present.
2018-362, an ordinance to increase the number of Class AA liquor licenses by one for the Field Bar and Grill, Hookah Lounge, LLC, doing business as the Field Bar and Grill Hookah Lounge located at 933 North Grand Avenue West.
Is there a motion?
Motion for consent.
Motion for consent. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, please.
Alderman Tylen.
It's a AA license, which allows for a bar to sell packaged liquor. Is this a case of where it's like a craft beer, or something that's not available at other locations? Does anyone know?
Alderman, I did speak with the owner, and that the subject of craft beer did not come up in the discussion, but that's a question that we can find out the answer to.
Okay, because historically, I don't vote for AA licenses. I don't. And the exception I make for that is that in a case of where you have someone who's brewing their own beer or having their own wine, I see that is something that they're selling at their point of sale for their company. But if this is just another location that's wanting to sell packaged liquor along with their bar items, then I will be a no next week.
I believe that's the case.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Is this in Ward 5 or Ward 9?
It is in Ward 9. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Noted. 2018-363, an ordinance to increase the number of Class D liquor licenses by one for Parkway Pasta Incorporated, doing business as a pasta house company located at 2599 West Wabash Avenue.
Move to consent.
Second.
Motion for the consent agenda in a second. All those in favor signify. Any discussion? Excuse me.
Similar comments. Mr. Rupnick, thank you for your patience being here also 2 hours. You also have made a significant investment at the corner of Wabash and Route 4 Veterans, where Denny's once was. You're using a local general contractor. You're doing $1.3 million rebuilding of the structure. Thank you. And you hopefully, with Pasta House, there's a lot of buzz going around for Pasta House. You're going to bring diners up from Chatham, over from Pleasant Plains, from Berlin, and they're going to pay our sales tax. So, and you're going to get folks to not just go out and dine 2 or 3 times, but maybe 4 times in a week, including the Pasta House. So,
no pressure, Joe.
No pressure.
And I have to throw in that you've created a lot of discussion, because a lot of people are trying to figure out exactly what you're building onto the building that's going up. A lot of people are speculating, and they're looking forward to your grand opening to find out what it is.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Good luck to you. Okay, I believe that concludes the ordinances that were before committee. Is there any unfinished business this evening? Any unfinished business? Hearing none. Any new business? Any new business? Mayor Langfelder.
Yeah, I'd ask Assistant Chief Dow Stokes to come forward, talk about the Citizens Police Academy, if you would, please. I think the applications are online till Friday.
Citizens Police Academy sounds good. Sounds like a good time. It actually is. So we encourage everyone that thinks they might be interested and know more about the Springfield Police Department, the job we do, the resources we have available to protect everybody and respond in even the most dangerous of situations. You kind of learn about each of those parts of within our department. People come out and speak, so it's a good learning experience for everybody. Classes that graduate tend to speak very highly of it and have a good time. But the class itself will go from August 29th, start August 29th and go for 9 consecutive Wednesdays from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. If people want to apply, they have till August 24th to do so. They can come get an application at the Springfield Police Department. Instructions are online, to include our Facebook page. Or they can call 788-8397 and speak to the field operations secretary who can assist them. There is a cursory background investigation because of some of the stuff they'll get to do as part of that class. And if people have questions, we'd be more than happy to help them through the process. I don't know if anybody had any questions right now about the Citizens Police Academy. It is a great opportunity to work on police community relations and for the public to learn what we do and for us to get to know them better and hear what concerns them most.
I guess my one thing I would like to ask is, this is aimed for adults 18 and up, correct?
It is, yes, sir.
And we have other programs for like teenagers that are interested in things of that nature, but this is not that. This is, the Citizens Police Academy is for 18 and up.
Correct, that's correct. We had a couple juvenile police academies recently, and there'll be a teen police academy in the future as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. Thank you.
Mayor?
And then tomorrow at City Hall is City Hall Selfie Day. August 15th is the official City Hall Selfie Day.
We expect to see plenty from you then.
So we're going to prepare ahead of time? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I think Alderman Hanauer and I did it last year, didn't we?
Did you get him a selfie stick?
No, I forgot this year. Dang it.
Still got time.
I did it last year.
Alderman Tylen.
Something I just want to bring up and remind our residents about that we have available, and it's the e-commerce safe zone that we have available at the Municipal Center East, where people who are making online transactions, if you don't feel safe meeting a person at a neutral place or having them come to your house or going to their house, you have the ability to arrange for them to meet you, and I believe it's 800 West Monroe is the actual physical address. It's in the lobby of the police department. I've noticed in the news in the last week that there have been several incidents, not in Springfield, but in surrounding areas and nearby communities where people have been robbed. There's a suspected kidnapping, some other incidents where people have been injured or lost the property that they were trying to sell because they did not use a safe zone or a place like this. I just want to remind everyone that if you're doing this, we have this available and it is there. And I think the only exception that we ask is that if you are, isn't it handguns and weapons, like knives and things aren't accepted either, but if it's anything else, that's what that's there for.
Any further new business? Any further new business? Hearing none. Any citizens' requests to address the committee? Mr. Clerk?
None.
Anyone in the audience wish to address the committee?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Alderman.
Just one item of old business. I want to commend our Springfield Police Department for their handling of the payroll incident at Westbrook last week at the Seven Pines area. That area, which is Ward 7, has the most concentrated number of apartments anywhere in the city, over 1,250 units. And then you've got residential areas to the west, Westchester and Sherwood. And so a number of phone calls have been made about that situation, and that what could have been a disastrous situation with loss of life turned into a voluntary surrender, so to speak, and without any loss of life or injury. And I just want to commend the whole team of SPD and all those that participated, including NPO Mike Badger, who spoke to the MacArthur Boulevard Association on last Thursday morning. He was one of the officers with the bullhorn and was communicating with the payrolee. And so it's thank you for our men in uniform.
Thank you. Any further business to come before the
executive session?
Is there a need for executive session?
Yes.
Aye.
For which purpose?
Corporation Counsel?
Pending probable imminent litigation.
Motion for executive session
Won't
for
be long.
pending probable litigation.
Is there a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor of executive session, please signify by saying aye. Aye. We stand in recess.
Excuse me.
All right. No good details unpunished.
Because that makes more sense.
The individual that reached out to me about that issue in your ward that I made sure that you were aware of.
Motion to reconvene from executive session.
Motion has been made to reconvene from executive session in a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
To adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Motion to a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Everybody have a good evening.
I'll be selling these for Sister Cities if you or your family is interested in one of the coupon books.
Okay.
I haven't even looked at them. She just gave them to me tonight.
Who, Janet?
Mrs. Zirkle. The coupon books for the next year. If you enter the code on your phone, you can also do the app. Some of the, like when I was in Cincinnati, I was able to pull stuff up for Skyline Chili. I got a buy one, get one at Outback Steakhouse in Ohio.